So my daughter-in-law walks up to me and she said, Mama, it's both of them. I said, they're both hurt. She said, no. I said, well, what? She said, they're both dead.
MessyFam, this one's different. This is coming from a creator named Lizzy Braxton, and she's about to take us through the day that she lost her husband and her son. And I just want you all to know, MessyFam, that this story is raw, it's painful, but it's real. So I need y'all to take y'all time with this story time and really hear her out.
I have tried to record this video so many times, but I'm just going to go ahead and speak. This is part 1 on how I lost my husband and my son May 8, 2024. That morning was a normal morning in our house. My son and his fiance were getting ready for work. I was in my office working. My husband was off because his semi was getting fixed at the time. I heard the alarm going off on my house. I ran outside and I told my son, I said, you were going to leave without telling me bye. He grabbed me, he hugged me, spun me around and was like, bye, Mama. And they headed off to work. As I was sitting in, my office working, I heard my husband president pull up. My husband was a part of a motorcycle club called Square Business Riders out of Fort Worth, Texas. Him and his president, blood could not make them closer. Him and his president was like brothers. His president, UC, pulled up to our house and they sat in the garage, him, my husband, my mom, and they were out there for hours before I came outside. And this was pretty odd because we passed by each other's house, but we never just really sit around and just visit things. It always have been us on a pass by. So hours had passed by. I was still working. I still can hear all of them laughing in the garage. So I grabbed my computer and I go outside with them and sit in the garage and just conversate with them. The afternoon is coming now. So my husband, President UC, said, I have to take my wife to lunch. He said, I'm about to go. He said, why don't you and Casper come with us? And me and my husband, we didn't even think about it. We was like, yeah, let's go. So we got dressed, me and my husband. We went to UC and Nikki's house. We rode to lunch with them. And now that I'm thinking about all of this, that wasn't a normal day for none of us. But to us, it seemed like this is normal because we had such a great time. So we were sitting, having lunch, just chit-chatting. My husband and UC talking about motorcycle stuff. Me and Nikki, we're just mother stuff. And in probably the ending of us wrapping up our lunch date, my husband looks at me and he says, this is your family. And it wasn't odd to me that he said that to me because my husband lived by, his motorcycle family and his duties. He loved the motorcycle world. And he was like, this is your family. If something happens to me, these are the people you have to lean on. And I was like, okay, it was normal for him to always tell me that from the time we were dating to the time we got married. We got up from the table and me and Nikki, we're still, chit-chatting, grabbing our stuff. My husband turns around and he had this hold on. Sorry. So my husband had this glow and this big smile on his face. So much so that me and Nikki just kind of looked at each other and Nikki, I remember something to the fact of Nikki saying, what's up with him? But he just turned around and he just smiled at us. And he just took off walking. And we get in the truck with them. They drop us off to our car. I can remember this like it was yesterday. We were listening to Kendrick Lamar, song Not Like Us, and just trying to, dissect it and talk about it. So we get back into our car. We tell them bye. We get home. When we get home, my son is at home now, him and his fiance. And my son, he's a gamer. He's on the game. So the girls were out in the garage. My mom, my son's fiance, who I call my daughter, and actually my youngest daughter, we're sitting in the garage. At this time, my daughter was 7 months pregnant. My husband came outside and he said, I'm going to run to 7-Eleven to go and get me some snacks, something to drink, because I'm going to watch this movie, because he was heading off to work the next morning. And for a very long time, this have ate me up. I told my husband, I said, why don't you bring denim with you? Y'all take the motorcycles and bring denim with you. And that killed me for a long time. Because if you knew my son and my husband, they always were together. They love riding their motorcycles together, things of that nature. My son was in the middle of a game, so my husband waited for him, waited probably 20 minutes. And I can vividly see my son come to the door with his gaming headset on. And he said, we want to ride. So they got their helmets and everything, and my son hugged his fiance, and my husband, he walked back in the garage and he grabbed my hand and he said, I honor you. And he said, I am so in love with you and I love you so much. And that was my husband. He was very passionate, loving, and he always would, tell me that. So it wasn't like, he said that and I was just like, this is new. That was him all the time. So they get on their motorcycles, and I'm gonna try to insert a picture of them from my cameras that day.
My mama got it. I don't know where I got this from. I know I got it from, but I don't even know where I got it. Well, this is my uniform.
Okay, this is part 2.
All right, Messy Family, before we get into part 2, I'm not gonna lie to you. This is very triggering. I can relate to her in so many ways, and I can feel her energy. I don't know if you guys can feel her energy, but I can feel her energy. It's screaming right now. And it's hard for me to watch her talk about her kids' final moments and watch those videos without feeling some type of way, because I've lost real brothers. I've lost real siblings as well. All you can do is think about the last moment you had with them. But what do you guys think so far, Messy Family?
Cycles. About 20 minutes later, we're still sitting in the garage, me, my mom, and my 2 daughters. I get a call from Nikki. So I answer the phone, and Nikki's like, hey, Liz, is Casper home? And I said, no, he's around the corner at 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven was like 5 minutes away from my house. And it wasn't unusual for someone from the club to call my phone whenever he's on his motorcycle and he's not answering the phone, for, someone to call me and tell me, get Casper to give me a call back. So I didn't think of anything. And so I told her that Casper was with Denim and they were at 7-Eleven. She said, okay, I'll give you a call back. Within the minute, she called me back. This second time when she called me back, that is what kind of scared me, because it was the calmness in her voice that brought trembles to my heart at that time. So she said, hey, I'm gonna send you an address and I need you to get to this address. She said somebody went down, I don't know who, and I don't know any details right now. And so I said, okay. And so she sent me the address. We're still on the phone. I put the address in. This address is like 20 minutes away from my house. And it's on the other side of town that we never been on. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, somebody from the club went down, but that's not my family. They're just not answering the phone right now. My son had left his cell phone at home because, once again, he was gaming at the time that they were getting ready to leave. So I called my husband and the phone just rang. And so I'm like, okay. So we get in the car. I put the address in my GPS. When the GPS tells me I'm about 7 minutes out, I get this paralyzing fear in me. And I remember the cars
was going around my car so fast, and I was like, I'm driving but they're going so fast, and I looked down at my speed and literally I was going 8 miles an hour. That's just how scared I was in the moment. So we pull up to the crash site, and it's so many police officers, so many fire trucks, ambulance, but their lights are going, but nobody's moving. And by this time, all of our friends, neighbors, the club, has gotten to the crash site. And I'm sitting in the car. I pull up and I put my car in park. My mom and my 2 daughters, they jetted out the car. And I sit there. I open my sunroof. And I'm trying to hear what's going on, but everybody is quiet. So I get out of the car. And I stand at the end of my car by the trunk area, and I just stand there. And I hear my daughter scream at the top of her lungs, my brother, my brother. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, my son is hurt. So now that fear kind of left, and I was like, I have to go check on. 1 second. So now I'm like, I have to go check on my son. So as I'm walking across the street to get towards the crash site, one of my husband's friend, she stops me, and she has tears in her eyes, but she never said one word to me. And she just hugs me, and I said, it's my son. I said, my son is hurt. And she never said anything. She just stared at me, and she looked at me like, I wish I can just tell you that your son is hurt and everything else is okay. She didn't say anything to me. By that time, my husband's president was pulling up. But my daughter-in-law was walking towards me. She wasn't crying. So I'm saying to myself, okay, he's hurt. So I'm trying to walk towards her, but I have a crowd of people stopping me from walking towards her. Oh, excuse me, y'all. So my daughter-in-law walks up to me, and she said, Mama, it's both of them. I said, they're both hurt. She said, no. I said, well, what? She said, they're both dead. I gotta take a break. I'll come back with part 3. Okay, part 3 on how I lost my husband and my son. So after she told me that they were both dead, I passed out. As I was coming to, I could hear them yelling to get my husband's president, because I can hear my husband's president yelling, but everything is so muffled. I couldn't understand what was going on. But as he got closer, I hear him yelling, Casper, get up. Casper, get up. And by this time, Nikki's approaching me. And I just remember she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I just collapsed in her arms. And when I spoke with her days later, she was like, I was so scared for you. She said, you collapsed in my arms, Liz, and you just wasn't breathing. She said, and I didn't know what to do. She said, I just was screaming, Liz, breathe. Liz, get up. Liz, breathe. But I was just devastated. I was devastated. When we pulled up to the crash site, I didn't even realize. I seen the car that caused this accident, but I wasn't really, focused on, usually the norm, what the norm is you ask what happened. I never asked what happened. I just needed to know that they were okay. So I'm looking, but I'm on the other side of the car. My husband and son is on the opposite side where I'm at. So I never seen them. I do know that my son was about 10 feet away from my husband. I won't go into any details about the driver and whatever. but it was deemed an accident. Basically, he pulled out in front of them, and my husband hit the vehicle. My son was supposed to hit the car, but my husband got in front of my son, and he hit the vehicle and died on impact. My son, I guess from the shock of seeing what had just happened, my son hit the curb and broke his neck. So he died about 10 feet away from my husband.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I am amazed that this woman can sit in front of this camera and tell us this. Like, you're talking about a story that happened 12 months ago. I literally have no words, Messy Family. What would you do? It sounds like the stepdaughter was just like in shock. Because the way she just walked up to the mom, like how she walked up to her with no emotion and said they both passed away. It's crazy. Like, she had to be in shock. Listening to her tell this story.
So I'm sitting there on the ground, and I'm just confused because how we were okay. Literally 27 minutes. We were fine. And now we're here. So now I'm thinking in my head at that moment. I'm like, this is okay. We're gonna be fine. I'm gonna get up tomorrow. This is gonna be a bad dream, and life is gonna be normal. They're gonna be home. That's what I'm saying to myself on the ground. I'm like, everything's gonna be just fine. Well, it wasn't. So now I have to get in to putting our families on notice of what's going on. And so many people told me in that moment when I called them, like, the first person that I called, like, now when I think about it, I'm such a family oriented woman. The first thing I thought about was, now I am the head of my household. I have to make sure that, these contracts that that I have to call, and let them know what just happened. So I'm calling my jobs. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not even calling family right now. And I can remember speaking to my manager at the time, who was actually a really good friend of mine. And I told her, I said, I'm here. I'm standing outside of the crash site where my husband and my son just went down. They're both in the middle of the street and they're dead. And I remember her saying, Liz, why are you calling me? She was like, this is not even, don't even worry about that right now. But in my head, I was in survival mode. Like, okay, it's me now. I'm gonna take a second, y'all. Part 4 on how I lost my husband and son. So now I'm putting our family on notice. My husband was from Seattle, Washington. So I called his mom, and I just remember saying, Denham and Casper are dead. And I can remember her saying, excuse me? And that was really all I could say at the moment was, they're dead, mama. And I didn't go into any details about how they died or what happened. I told her, I'll call you back. I called my husband's dad, my brothers. And even in that moment, like, a lot of the things that happened in that moment is very foggy to me. I had no idea that I jumped on Snapchat and I was screaming to the top of my lungs, videoing that crash site. And if I can find that video, I will insert it.
I never asked y'all for nothing.
Never asked you for nothing. Lift my family up, man. My husband and my son just died in a fucking motorcycle crash. Please, y'all. Lift us up right now, please, God. Part 5 on how I lost my husband and son. So now everyone is on notice, and if I didn't call them by me putting the Snapchat up, in the mix of me just being confused, grieving, and just trying to get the word out that this just happened, contact me. We're devastated. My family is calling, my husband's family from Washington, they're calling, and I can remember not even explaining what happened. I just was like, they're both dead, and just boohoo crying. And my husband's mom is like, what happened? How did they die? And I'm just like, in a motorcycle accident, and I didn't have all of the details. And this is really where Square Business Riders actually stepped in and shielded my family from a lot of heartbreak. My husband's president, I depended on him and his wife to do so much, and they did. They, like, a thank you could never be enough for what this MC done for my family. I never buried, family members, so I don't know what to do. I don't know who to call. I'm not in my hometown, so I'm in a new city. Even though I've been here for years, I don't know what to do. I can remember my mom, crying, my daughter-in-law, and all of a sudden, I just took a deep breath, and I was like, it's time to go. It felt like we were out there for forever. And I said, it's time to go. And I remember walking towards my car, and my husband, club member, was like, whoa, no, you can't drive. You can't leave. D actually lived on the same street as me, and he was a part of my husband's MC. So he was like, I'll take you home. I'll take y'all home. And I just remember getting in the backseat of the car, and I was just destroyed. I closed my eyes going home, and it just felt like it took us forever to get home. But reality did not set in right then and there. I just knew when I got home, I was going to wake up. They were going to be at home, and everything was going to be okay. This was just a dream, whatever. So we get home, and I'm just sitting in the garage. And it's just quiet, by that time, everybody is passing by. They heard what happened, things of that nature. And, they're just checking on us. But I'm just in a zone. My daughter is in so much pain. She is going into labor. And at that time, she was like 7-8 months pregnant. And I just remember telling her, I can't bring you to the hospital. Just try and, lay down, relax, your blood pressure is up. And she did that. She didn't really, bother me. She just basically just stayed, laying down and just fighting through it. But I was so confused. Like, I was confused for like a week. So in that night, so once everyone basically went home, my daughter went into labor. And I remember going to the hospital and them taking her to labor and delivery. And I just could not compose myself. And I'm trying my hardest to, not make this about the tragedy that just fucking happened 10 hours ago. I'm like, okay, calm down. Everything is going to be just fine. You know, your grandbaby is, is trying to come early, and it's because of the stress that, my daughter is going through at the moment. And I just feel so bad because I kept losing conscious at the hospital. So I'm in the room with my daughter, and I can remember blanking out and coming to. And my daughter said, please take care of my mama. Just take care of my mama. And I'm just boohoo crying because I feel like this is not even about what just happened. This is about your granddaughter. Like, you can't even hold it together. That's what I'm saying to myself. And I remember the nurse, they put me in a wheelchair, and I just, I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed. And the nurse was like, you just suffered a tragedy, and I can remember she was crying with me. And I said, I can't even keep my emotions together from my grandbaby. I said, I'm so embarrassed. And she was like, this is a major tragedy you just suffered. She was like, you shouldn't feel embarrassed. The doctor came in, gave me some medicine, and like,
Okay, part 6 on how I lost.
The most beautiful thing so far about her situation is that, well, it's not beautiful about what happened, but the fact that the people around her were so supportive. Even I think is 100% respect goes out to his friends, the biker club that he was in, because it makes me think about stuff like that now. Because the way they handled her after he left, that's a man's biggest worry. We take care of our families, and then we worry that what will happen if we're not here. And the fact that his family, that his biker friends stepped up for him, his colleagues, heck, even the doctor stepped up and comfort her in these moments is truly a blessing, if you ask me.
Doctor gave me some medication that actually knocked me out for a few hours. They were able to stop my daughter's labor, and we were on our way back home. I felt numb. I didn't feel sad, and I didn't feel happy, but I just felt numb. I don't even know what the doctor gave me. I just know he gave me 2 pink pills, and I was knocked out. So we get home. Everybody is arriving. My family is arriving into town. My husband's family, our friends, the motorcycle clubs are stopping by. My husband club, was at my house, and they basically were doing everything for my family. When it came down to Square Business Riders and the Drip Gals social club, we didn't have to do anything. They took great care of my family, and that is something that I will always be grateful for. So we are, we get out of the car, we go into the house, and I'm just there, for the next couple of days. We are just there. People are staying at our house for hours at a time, just to make sure that we were okay. And I want to rewind back to the time that we got in the car to leave the crash site, and Nikki was looking in the car, and she said they lost the men of their house. It never dawned on me that the men of our home was actually gone. Like, my mind was just everywhere, and it's us women. And we are anticipating a little girl, my grandbaby. So, we're there. My husband motorcycle club is like regulating everything and just basically, keeping my family protected from hearing all of the details that happened. Because now I still don't know the details. I just know that they got into a motorcycle accident. I don't know none of the details. I don't want to know none of the details. I can remember, routing everyone to my husband's president. Whatever you got to tell me, whatever you saw, whatever talk to him, and I would get the information from him. And that's what happened. I didn't know how my son died until probably 3 days before his services. I didn't want to know. I did not want to accept the fact that my son was gone. I didn't know how my husband died. I didn't want to know. That was my true love, the love of my life. So I didn't I didn't care to know any details. I just know that this was bad. So we're going into Mother's Day. My husband and my son died that Wednesday. That Sunday was Mother's Day. That Saturday night, I was sitting in the garage. Everyone was getting ready to leave and go home. And me, my daughters, and my mom, I took my wig off and I ran my hands through my hair. And my hair came out of my head as if I put some type of hair removal in my hair. And it scared everybody because we all like jumped up. And I was like, what is happening? So I did it again and more hair came out. And it wasn't like shedding. It was like coming from the root, like dead hair just pulled out from the root. So I ran in the restroom. And now, I'm kind of nervous because I was diagnosed with a brain tumor a year prior before this happened. So now it dawns on me like, okay, something may be wrong with my brains now again. I don't know what's going on. So we're panicking. And all of my hair fell out of my head, like as if I took a razor and shaved my hair off. But I didn't. It just from the grief and the shock that was happening. So if I can find a picture, I will cover my face up and insert that picture because I was still sitting in the garage when I pulled out all of my hair. And then eventually I had to just shave off the rest of the patches that was on my head. But all of my hair fell out. And that was the time when I realized that you got to take care of yourself. Part 7 on how I lost my husband and son. So now we are a few days after they have passed away. We're probably 4 days. We're at Mother's Day. In my head, I did not want to view them. I did not want anyone to view them. Me and my husband would speak all the time about if something happens to one of us, what we want. My husband he always told me, I don't want a funeral. Cremate me, press me in a diamond, and keep going about your life. But how could I do that? Because now I'm a grieving mother. And my husband has his father and his mother still alive. And I was not about to automatically cremate him without his parents being in Texas, being able to view their son and also have an opinion on what they want for their final wishes for their son. So everything that me and my girls and my mom done for those boys was nothing. It had nothing to do with us. We were so selfless when it came down to making sure everyone walked away from this situation and they felt whole and they were able to say their final goodbyes to both of them. And, just basically doing what's right for everyone, even though we didn't want to. So that Sunday, the funeral home called me that Friday or Saturday, I don't know. And they said we were able to view them tableside. Wait, let me back up. They didn't call me. They called my husband's president and he relayed the message to me, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. Everything is just crazy right now, so I don't know. Whichever way it happened, they got in contact with the family and said that we can see them on Sunday. I had already told everyone, I'm not seeing them. I don't want to see them. Y'all can go up there to see them, but we're not going. I was laying in the bed that Sunday morning around 8 o'clock. My ex from years ago, his mother called me and I see it's her and I'm like, and me and her, we didn't have a good relationship. So what made me answer the phone, I guess I just wanted to know what she was going to tell me in that moment. So I answered the phone and the first thing she said was, "Oh, Liz." And I just boohoo cried. And I jumped up out of the bed and I went into my bathroom and I just stood there in the mirror and I just began to spill my heart out to her. And I told her, I was like, I don't know why this happened to my family. I said, I'm scared. I don't want to see them. And I don't know what to do. I said, I'm just so scared. I don't know. And this woman words, they ring loud in my head still to today. She told me, she said, Liz, your baby is at that funeral home. Your husband is at that funeral home. She said, I want you to get up. I want you to fight that fear. And I want you to go and embrace your baby. Embrace your husband. She said, this is going to bring you so much peace. But running from fear is not going to do anything in this moment. Her words filled me so bad in that moment that I jumped up in my night clothes and went to the funeral home. Me, my mom, my two girls, and my niece. My niece was in town that night, and we all just left. Everyone, like, we didn't do nothing. We ain't brush no teeth. We ain't change no clothes. Nothing. At that time, I was just determined to fight how I felt. Like, right now, even talking about it, I still shake. Like, I'm not over that. But I remember jumping into the car with my girls, and we went to the funeral home. And I'll insert the picture of us at the funeral home. Part 8 on how I lost my husband insane.
Now, before we get to part 8, I just have to highlight the fact that that's the type of people you need in your corner. Like, that was such good advice. This is why we need to respect our elders, younger Messy family members. I know it's some 17 to 24-year-olds in here. I see all the analytics, so I know it's the younger crowd. And I saw some of y'all commenting. Respect your elders. Listen, respect what they got to say, especially if they never done anything. Like, I think that was truly God in this moment. Like, she needed to hear this, because if she would have buried her son without seeing them, I don't believe that she would have been able to tell this story time today if she didn't take that advice and run with it. I'm Messy Family, but let me know what y'all think so far. Y'all still with me? What are your thoughts right now? Let's keep going with this story time. I'm not gonna lie, it's heartbreaking, but it's getting to the point where I'm starting to see like strength.
So we get to the funeral home. The only people who are there is my husband's motorcycle club. Those are the only people that I was going to allow to see them. So as we pull up, they were all pulling up, just getting out of their cars. And I can remember getting out of my car, and they were looking at me like, why are you here? Because you said you wasn't going to come. But it wasn't like looking at me like, why are you here? They're looking like, are you okay? Are you sure you can go in here and be okay? Because the 4 days that, they had been at my house, and, they really had already knew my mental state, and they were just trying to make sure that you're okay to go in here. And I just didn't say anything. And I was just like, I'm going in. So we went inside of the funeral home, and I am so afraid of funeral homes. Like, I'm so afraid of funeral homes too. If I have to pass by a funeral home, I will literally go all the way around not to be around a funeral home. I don't like it. But what I can say is that Tree of Life Funeral Home was so kind to me. I can't even tell you how kind and professional that staff is at the Tree of Life. We walk inside the funeral home, and we all go to the back because they are table side. And they're side by side in this room, and they just look like they're asleep. And I'm standing there, and I refuse to look at my son because I wasn't ready to accept what was going on. So I ran towards my husband, and I just stood there and I just cried. And I had this thing what I used to do is I would lay my hand on his chest at night,
and feel his heartbeat. I ran to the side of that table and I just put my hand on his chest to see, like, maybe he's okay. Maybe he'll get up. But it wasn't a heartbeat there. He was cold. And he was just laying there like he was asleep. Then I focused on my son. And I just, my heart just crumbled. I just looked at him and I was so afraid to even touch him. And in that moment, I just stood there. I wasn't afraid to touch my husband, but I was afraid to touch my son. I didn't know why, but I didn't want to touch him. And I just stood there and I stared and I just cried and I just wept because this is real. This is real. And I guess for like the 4 days that, they were being released from the coroner's office, they was going to the funeral home, I still was living in the illusion that this is not real. But that moment at the funeral home, I knew this was it. This is nothing I can do. It's nothing nobody can do. And I walked up to my son and I just placed my hand on his dreads. And I just was like, you are gone. Like, you're really, really not here anymore. I wanted everything in that moment. Whatever I felt that would preserve their final moments, I wanted it. Because I remember asking the funeral director to cut out some of his dreads from the back of his hair. And he came in with the scissors and he raised my son's head up. And he took out 6 of his dreads.
Part 9 on how I lost my husband and my son. And I'm sorry that I had to break this up. I had no idea that it was going to take me this long to just actually speak about it. This is my first time speaking about it. So I'm sorry that it's broken up in so many parts. I think this is going to be my last part for tonight. And then I'll try again tomorrow. But he handed me my son dreads. And I just remember standing there and I just was holding them and I'm smelling them, just really trying to make my brain catch up with what is happening in our life right now. I called my husband's mom on FaceTime. She requested me to call her because I called her when I was on my way to the funeral home, and she said, I want to see both of them. And I let her see both of them on FaceTime. And now it's time for us to go home. So on my way going home, I was destroyed. I was just, it felt like it happened all over again, because now I've seen them and I realized that this is real. And what are we going to do from here? I have no clue. But my mental state was in shambles. It was horrible. We get home, and by this time, the drip gals had brought and when I say the drip gals is a social club. They brought so much stuff for us. Square Business Riders had so much stuff for us, so much food, water, toiletries. They actually showed me how I have felt so many people when they have lost a loved one. Because we think, if I just show up to the funeral, that's enough. If I call you, if I, comment my condolence to you or whatever, that should be enough. And it's not. So now we're moving into planning a double funeral. One of the worst parts that I can tell you this, the funeral process makes this process even harder. You know, the funeral process is the worst process. I wanted to have both of their coffins closed. I did not want to see them, but this was before I actually seen them at the funeral home. So now that I have seen them, I sit down with my girls and my mom and I tell them I'm opening up both coffins at the services. And my mom and them, they agree. So I set their funeral date to May 25th. This was going to give my husband family time, my family time. My family stays, 5.5 hours away. His family stays in Washington. This was going to give everybody enough time to get into town. So now we're planning their funerals. I'm dealing with everything for my husband. I allowed my son fiance to do everything for him, and which I'm so grateful for, because I could not do anything regarding my son. I didn't even want people saying my son's name. It got to the point to where family members was coming in, and everybody who was already there the day of the accident knew from that point on not to mention my son. Don't say anything about him. Don't say anything. You don't even say his name around me. And it got to the point where family members was like, are you forgetting that you lost your son too? Which is, I understand, because everyone was talking about my husband. Everyone was, just telling memories about my husband. No one mentioned my son because they were on notice not to mention my son. The sound, just people saying his name, just made me lose it every time. And it got to the point where I had to check myself and realize, like, this is real life, and you're gonna have to face this, but I wasn't ready. Okay, this is going to for sure be my last video for tonight. This is part 10 on how I lost my husband and son. So I got a little ahead of myself. That, I believe it was that Saturday or that Sunday. I'm not sure. Those days are all running together for me. But I don't know which agency called to release their clothes. I don't know if it was the coroner's office or the funeral home. I'm not sure. But I redirected them to my husband's president to deal with that situation. They were actually dealing with everything for us. So he got my husband's vest and helmet that he went down in. And of course, that was a no-brainer. My husband's cut that he was in was property of SBR, and I wanted them to okay the fact that my family can either receive that vest or it will go to his motorcycle club for them to do, whatever they were going to do with the vest. So my husband's president and his wife calls me and they tell me they have my husband's belongings. I can't remember how I got my son's belongings. I don't remember at all, but we got his belongings too. My husband's president came to present his vest and his helmet to me and my family. And I can remember, his wife asking me, are you okay to receive this? You sure you want to receive this? And I was just like, yeah, like that, this is fine. Like, I have to face my fear. And this was just so bad to me mentally. So he goes to his truck
He pulls out the vest and the helmet. And I just remember just crying because I could still smell his blood on the helmet and on the vest. The vest on the back of my husband's cut, it was white. But by him bleeding out, it was red, like the wordings and everything. And I have a picture. Okay, part 11 on how I lost my son and my husband. Y'all, I'm trying to get this done before tomorrow. Tomorrow marks their 1 year anniversary. So I'm trying my best to go through my memory bank and just get this done. But I want to answer some of your questions. Some of you guys asked what was my relationship with my mother-in-law and my father-in-law at the time of the accident. Me and my mother-in-law did not have a good relationship throughout me and my husband dating and marriage. When I say we were never disrespectful to each other, but we knew like, I don't deal with you. And that's just how it was. We're two alpha women. And I am more of a person with boundaries. And once you cross those boundaries and I tell you cross them and you do it again, then I just don't deal with you. My father-in-law and his wife, we have a great relationship. He's very respectful. His wife is beyond respectful. And that's just our, nature. We call each other. We check on each other. So we don't have any spats in between that. But
I was wondering why she said that when she originally heard what happened, she said that she called his father and his wife. At the time, I was thinking that that's his mom and dad. I thought she was just saying it like that. But then I was thinking like, well, why didn't she call his mom? Now we understand why. It does be like that a lot in these relationships. Sometimes, I'm not saying this is her mom case, but sometimes, man, parents those moms really do be overstepped. And fellas, you got to be able to, kind of put your mother in her place in a sense, if that's possible. I mean, I would definitely put my mom in her place if she was overstepping to the point that my wife feel offended. You know what I mean? But that's just me personally. I don't have a great relationship with my mama, so take it with a grain of salt, I guess.
But when it came down to their son, I don't care how I felt about her. And I don't care how she felt about me. Whatever she wanted done in that moment, it was going to get done. Whatever my father-in-law wanted done in that moment, it was going to be done. It was not, I'm the wife, I do what I want to do with my husband, and it's not, no. I am a grieving mother also at the time. So I knew how it felt to lose a child. I wanted everything to be done perfectly for them and also for me. I just wanted us to all be able to have peace after these services. So we are now about to go into the planning of the funerals. So now we are planning their funerals. We are at the funeral home. We're making the arrangements. My husband's family is coming into town later that week. It was a week in between their services, so they're coming into town. I had a few days to write their obituaries, bring their clothes to the funeral home, and view them. I had to basically deal with the funeral home 3 or 4 times throughout that time before the funeral actually happened. So we get the dates, we get everything laid out for their services, the colors and everything. And now is going into writing, obituaries. I can remember I wrote my husband's obituary probably the next day and sent the pictures for the obituary. And I waited for my son. I asked his fiance to write his obituary as if she had known him when he was a kid and knew, they were together for 5 years. And I remember her saying, "Mama, I can get the pictures together, but I need you to sit down and write his obituary." And she was like, "And you can just tell me, what you want to write on the obituary, but I can't do it." And I just remember just boohoo crying. But I sat at the park the day before the deadline to get the obituary writings and pictures for my son. I sat at the park and wrote his obituary. Sent the pictures in to the funeral home, and we went from there.
we knew what we wanted them to wear. We knew that since my son was prospecting for SBR and my husband was a member for 6.5, almost 7 years for SBR, we knew we wanted something on them that represented their motorcycle club. So I made one phone call, to Nikki. She got that like the next day. She was like, I'll get the t-shirts, for them. We're done, and they got that over to me. We dropped it off to the funeral home. And here's the part that sticks with me. I've never been through a funeral process. So when I got to the funeral home, we had 2 of their riding t-shirts with their names on it with SBR across it in their pants. And I remember giving it to the lady, the receptionist, and I was like, this is for them. So she opens the bag and she looks and she says, no, we also need undergarments for them. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, I need you to go and get underwears, socks, t-shirts, if they wore t-shirts. She said whatever they wore when they were alive is how we dress them. And I was like, okay. And I just turned around and I walked out of the funeral home. Me and my daughter-in-law, my mom and my daughter were sitting in the car because they hadn't had enough of dealing with this process. So we get in the car, and I remember, I don't know if we went to like a Burlington or a City Trend, but we went somewhere around the corner and just kind of bought the stuff to bring it back to the funeral home. And I can remember holding up a pair of socks and, boxers for them. And in the middle of the store, I'm just boo-hoo crying. And I'm just like, how is this my life? And why is this my life? Things of that nature. Like, it just was so emotional. That was an emotional process. But we got it back to the funeral home, and now they're going to dress them. So they called me probably a day, probably that Thursday of the week of the services. They called and they told me that we have a final viewing. And the final viewing is you viewing your family member as if they are set up at wherever site you have them at. And I can just remember shaking so bad. I have already seen them, once, but it's like you have to see them again before the services and basically approve that you like how they look and it is okay to present them at the service. So now it is the Friday before the services, and my husband's father, his sons, and his wife, they are all in town from Washington, and they met me at the funeral home. So it's me, my daughter-in-law. My mom stayed in the car. But the funeral home basically have them set up in a chapel, where you can go in and see them. But the way how this chapel was, the doors was actually closed. It's kind of like a small kind of room area, but it is how they would be set up at their services. So I remember the doors opening to that chapel. And the smell of flowers, I hate the smell of flowers because it just kind of reminds me of a funeral home. It just hits me like a whirlwind. It hits my daughter. My daughter, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, she's standing there and she goes limp, like weak. We're not even in the room. The door's just open and it's just the smell of fresh flowers. And my daughter just goes sit in the lobby. She never comes into the room. My daughter-in-law grabs my hand, and she's like, we got to do this. We have to. Like, it's okay. Let's go in. We walked in. I didn't even look at my son. He was on the right side of the room. My husband was on the left side of the room. And I just turned my back to my son. And I just looked at my husband. And every thought, every memory I had of us as one family, I just stood there and I just cried
And I just stared at him. And I'm just like, you're not coming back. Like, this is it. And I remember I turned around and I glanced at my son, and I just got so weak. And I just sat in a chair. They had a chair at the, probably like by a window or something like that. I'm not sure if it was a window, but it was a chair. And I just kept looking at him, looking at his hair, looking at his hands. And for some reason, like, his hands was kind of locked in this position, like he was pulling a throttle down on the bike or something, or holding a brake on a bike. That's how his hands was locked. And I just could not look at his face.
Part 13 on how I lost my son and my husband. Y'all, I know I'm jumping on here with my bonnet on, night clothes on, but I am determined to get this done before tomorrow.
I mean, listen, before we get into this final part 13, I want to know what you guys think so far about just the fact that she can see her husband, but she can't see her son. Why do you guys feel like she gets this hurtful reaction more seeing her son than her own husband? I believe that she just gets a sense of security from him. So when she sees in this traumatic moment, the first person she wants to be around and be with is her husband. Her son, this is someone you're supposed to protect. I have children as well. In your mind, she's probably thinking like, this is a child I'm supposed to protect, and he's gone. And it's hitting her harder. Your husband and you plan these type of things to happen, but you never plan this with your son. It just hits a different nerve. But what do you guys think, Messy Family? Let me know in the comment section. Drop this timestamp, answer it, just to let me know that you guys been following along this whole time.
So we had a beautiful funeral. The procession back to the funeral home was just breathtaking. So many motorcycles. I didn't want the common quietness when it comes down to bikers funeral. You know, they don't want your music on, they don't want you roaring, your pipes and things like that. If you knew my husband, if you knew my son, they were riders. They loved loud music, loud pipes. They made the most noise when they were pulling up somewhere. They were just loud. So I remember telling everybody, like, I want to hear you. I want to hear your music. I want to hear, the rolling of your pipes. And still to today, even when I ride my motorcycle, it makes me tear up. Because those were the noises that alerted my family that, hey, they're outside, open the garage or something like that. So I'm trying to keep it together, y'all. I've been crying on every video, but this is just raw me right now. So I'm going to insert a couple of videos on here. They still are videos on my page that I had uploaded around that time, but it's a couple of videos that I want to insert on here so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. And I will also upload the video of us returning to the funeral home because they got cremated.
They really turned up for her. Man, they really showed up for her husband. This is how you know this man did everything right in life. He had a lot of people that loved him. were deep too. So I'm trying to go out. Nah, I ain't gonna have this many people show up already, you know. Yeah. Too much of an introvert for this. Man, would be nice.
Till we meet again. His brothers. All right. Son. I love you, big boy. Till we meet again, baby. Take care of yourself. Never tell him goodbye. My son, till we meet again. Love you, boy. So this wraps up my story time. You don't understand how hard it was to be this vulnerable and to just record no matter what. Don't make it, about me. I just wanted to tell my story. So for the 1 year anniversary for my husband, Carl James Goings, and my son, Denham James Lewis, I will forever honor you. I love you guys so much. And until we meet again, ride in peace. Thank you all for your kind words. Please continue to pray for our family as we approach 1 year, May 8th, 2025.
All right, Messy family. Now, that's the story time. If you guys want to follow her for more updates, please follow her. I had her tagged throughout the entire video, so go check her out. Ms. Braxton, you are a very powerful woman. I noticed that you mentioned something about a brain tumor prior. Now, I do pray for your health, and I pray that you find the strength and continue to keep the strength for you and your family as you move forward. And your daughter, your stepdaughter, I just pray for you guys because that is truly traumatic. The fact that you brought us along with you, honestly, I'm about to go hug my children. I'm about to go spend some time with my family. So thank you very much for this story time, and I pray that it reached the people it needs to reach because it definitely reached me. To the next story time, Messy family. Peace.